Okay, here we go, lesson 2.2. So today we're going to be looking at the slope of a line. Gotta get my pen in the right order here. Some key ideas and some summaries here. So we have that the slope of a line is a ratio of the change in y, which happens to be the rise, to the change in x, which is the run, between any 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2 on the line. So you can kind of see the slope formula right here, right? We look at it as a ratio of rise over run. It's always the change in y over the change in x, okay? On the graph, we can see this rise. Sometimes we make this right triangle and we can count, right? Again, this is calculating it mathematically. Here is a positive slope where the line rises from left to right, a negative slope. So this kind of summary gives it to you. Your positive, your negative, and then look at a horizontal line, a slope of 0, right? There's no slope, 0 slope. No rise, no anything, just a run, really, right? And then undefined. The line is a vertical line. And so we're going to talk more about that as we proceed through this video of notes. Okay. So the example from your textbook, describing the slope and then finding the slope. So we can look at this and it's going from left to right. We read a book left to right, read sentences left to right. So read your lines and your graphs left to right. So if the line's going up, right, it's going to be a positive slope. So you can take, and you could do it this way, you could calculate it, and this difference here from this point to this point, we know the answer is going to be positive, so we could really just count how many spaces. That's 5 spaces. Here, it's 5 spaces. If you calculate it, you're going to get, 4 minus this negative 1 over 3 minus this negative 3, and that's shown here, or 5 over 6. So this number over this number, 5 over 6, okay? And they're kind of showing that in the run direction, this is the change in x right here. It's a positive 6. This is I would totally do this differently. I would do, because you're doing your rise first. So I would go here like that, and then here like that, it doesn't really matter. But as long as you're like putting the numbers in the correct place and understanding. Because if I'm going to start here, I would probably be going in the downward position. But think about that. If we're going from here, we're going down 5 as a negative 5, and then we're also going back, or a negative 6, and a negative divided by a negative is also a positive. So that's also correct, right? So think about that. A negative over a negative is positive. So either way you look at the numbers, it's positive. Here, reading the graph left to right is a negative slope, okay, because it's going down. Now, again, they did, from the run is 2, and then the rise is negative 3. Again, you could do, from here, you could do your rise first as negative 3, and then you could do your run. Doesn't matter. Looking at your points, doesn't matter which point you start with, but they're taking this and saying negative 2 minus 1, 1 over the 1 minus the negative 1. So look at that when you have this double negative. Remember, you're adding. So this becomes your negative 3 over, and this is going to become a positive 2. So only one of them is negative, and that's how you get the negative number. Okay. So let's do this. Let's find the slope. Okay, so again, rise over run. Change in y, we'll use this little triangle to kind of mean the change. So that's kind of what that means, the change in y over the change in x. So you'll see me do that a lot whenever we're talking about slope. To calculate it, you want to write, starting with either point, it doesn't matter. Once you pick a point to start with, that's the point you start with in the numerator and in the denominator. You can't start here with this y and then, do this and then come here and grab this number. You can't. If you start here, then in the denominator, you have to start here, okay, for the x's, just so that makes sense, right? So consider this like 0.1, x1, y1, 0.2, x2, y2, or reverse. It doesn't really matter where you start. You're just finding the difference, and I'll show you. So let's just start with this one for a change. So I'm going to start with 3 minus 2 and negative 2 minus 3. So 3 minus 2 is a positive 1. Negative 2 minus 3 is a negative 5. Only one of them will be negative. The correct answer, obviously it's a negative slope, is negative 1/5, right? Negative 1/5 is my answer. We can also see that going from here down, we're going down like in a negative 1 direction, and then we're going to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So negative 1/5 for this one, for number 1. Okay, number 2. We can do the, change in y over change in x. And so we have 1 minus a negative 1. And then we'll have 2 minus a negative 4. All right, now you have some integer math here. Subtracting a negative, you change both to positive. So we're going to get 2 over 6. And then that simplifies to a 1/3. Okay, so we can see that goes down and all the way back. Okay, but you can also see that there's a point here, which is at that 1/3, 1/3. But yes, between these 2 points is a change in 2 over a change in 6, or, negative 2, negative 6, or your run is a positive 6, your rise is a positive 2. Either way, it's a positive slope, so you know your answer is going to be positive. And finally, for number 3, negative 4 minus 1 over negative 5 minus this negative 3. So we'll get negative 5, and again, you're dealing with the double negative here. So we'll have negative 5 plus 3, or negative 2. And again, this is a positive slope. 2 negatives make a positive, 5/2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2, right? So this is 5, this is 2, positive direction, 5/2. All right, I'm about to clear the screen, so if you need to pause it. Now we are going to be calculating the slope from these 2 points. So we're given the 2 points, it's not on a graph. It's up to you if you want to get graph paper and then you can count, or just go ahead and use the slope formula, the change in y over the change in x. So negative 2 minus this negative 2, right? Negative 2 minus negative 2. Go back to the original point. I did the second one. So 7 minus 1. Again, double negative. So negative 2 plus 2 is 0. 7 minus 1 is 6. This is going to give us a slope equal to 0. A 0 slope is a horizontal line. Okay, that's the horizontal line. If we calculate the next one, we have negative 5 minus this negative 3. Coming back here, negative 3 for the x minus the other negative 3 for the x over here. And then again, double negative. So negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And there's this rule in math where we cannot divide by 0. Not sure if anybody's ever explained that to you, but it does not make mathematical sense. It is called undefined. And an undefined slope is the slope of a vertical line. from the summary on the first page. Okay. And then finally, change in y, 0 minus 8 over 0 minus 0, which we know is going to be another undefined. Negative 8 over 0, undefined. Because it is vertical, because all vertical lines are undefined. Okay, so in this number 7, it says, how do you know that the slope of every horizontal line is 0? Well, the equation of the horizontal line, right, is that the change in y is 0. The slope is 0. So we'll call this, let's call this A, and then we'll call this B, so we can kind of answer them. So A, well, because the change in y is 0. There's no slope, right? The change in y is always going to be 0. For B, how do we know that the slope of every vertical line is undefined? Because the change in x, so look at what's happening. The change in y is 0, and then here, the change in x, the denominator, is 0 for these vertical, okay? All right, that's how you're really going to be able to tell the difference. Okay, horizontal is 0 because the change in y is 0. Vertical is undefined because the change in x is 0. You cannot divide by 0. Basically, it's undefined, and we can talk about that in class if we need to, just to explain why that's undefined, because there's just no mathematical definition for it. And I won't explain it on the video, but I'll explain it in class. Okay, I'm about to clear. All right, it is time for your vocabulary and concept check. So pick one, either question 1, question 2, or question 3, and let me know which one you're answering, and please provide a detailed explanation. And then also, if you're left with any questions about anything that we talked about in the video notes today, please let me know about that as well. All right, see you in class.